Settle in now and pull the blanket close. Tonight, I'll tell you the strangest rags-to-riches tale the old world ever knew. It begins with a starving boy. No throne, no coin, no family left living, just hunger and a little wooden bowl. And yet, this beggar would one day wear the yellow silk of the Son of Heaven and rule the richest land on earth. How does a boy with nothing at all climb onto the dragon throne? Well, sit back. That is the whole of tonight's tale. And it starts, as these things often do in the worst of times, with a great empire already rotting from the inside. The year was 1328. China, in those days, was not ruled by the Chinese at all. It was ruled by the Mongols. 100 years before, the grandsons of Genghis Khan had swept down and taken the whole of it. They called their dynasty the Yuan. And for the common farmer at the bottom, life was hard and getting harder. Heavy taxes, cruel floods, and precious little mercy. Into that world, in a dirt-floored hut in the province of Anhui, a peasant couple had their youngest son. They named him Yuanzhang. There was no fortune waiting for that child. His people were farmers who rented their land and often could not pay. They moved and moved again. As a boy, Zhu minded the landlord's buffalo out on the hills. Barefoot, half-fed, but sharper, the old folks say, than any boy around. And he had a face you did not forget. A long, heavy jaw marked by the pox, not handsome, but once seen, never lost. Then came the year everything broke. 1344. First the drought, the rivers shrank, the rice withered, and the earth cracked open like old skin. Then a plague of locusts ate what little remained. And then, on the heels of the hunger, as it always comes, the plague. Sickness swept the village like a cold wind. And in the space of a single, terrible fortnight, it took nearly all that Zhu had. His father died, then his eldest brother, then his mother. Within weeks, the boy of 16 was almost alone in the world. And here is a detail that tells you everything. They were too poor even to bury their own dead. No coffins, no plot of ground. The boys wrapped their parents in worn white cloth and dragged them out to bury them. They hardly knew where. A neighbor, at last, took pity and gave a scrap of hillside. Zhu never forgot that, not the hunger, not the shame of it. They buried it deep, and it would shape every single thing he did after. Now orphaned and starving, the boy had one door left open to him. Down the road stood a Buddhist monastery, and a monk, at least 8. So Zhu shaved his head and took the robe, not out of faith, if we're honest, but out of hunger. A boy has to eat. He swept the halls, tended the lamps, bowed to the golden Buddhas, and learned his letters. For the first time in his life, a little peace. But peace in those years never lasted. The famine reached even the monastery gates. The rice ran out, and the monks could no longer be fed. So the abbot did the only thing he could. He handed each young monk a wooden bowl and sent them out to beg the roads for alms. And so, at 17, with a bowl and a staff and the clothes on his back, Yuanzhang walked out into a broken country. For 3 long years, he wandered, village to village, province to province, holding out that bowl and asking strangers for a mouthful of rice. Some gave, many did not. He slept in ruined temples, under bridges, in the open fields. He knew cold and rain and the ache of an empty belly. But a wandering beggar sees things a sheltered prince never will. And Zhu, walking the roads, saw the whole of China with clear, hungry eyes. He saw how the people suffered. He saw fat officials and starving farmers. He saw rebellion smoldering in 100 quiet places, waiting for a spark. He learned the shape of the land, which roads led where, how ordinary folk lived and thought and hurt. It was an education no school could give. 3 years of it, and then he turned back to the monastery, no longer a frightened boy. Something harder and wiser walked back through that gate. By now, the whole country was catching fire. Everywhere, desperate people were rising against the Mongols, rebels who tied red cloth around their heads. They were called the Red Turbans, and they burned with a wild belief that a new age was coming and the foreign dynasty was doomed. An old friend sent Zhu a letter urging him to join. He hesitated. It was a good way to get killed, so he asked the temple oracle. The signs, they say, told him to go, and perhaps he only needed telling. In 1352, Yuanzhang walked out and joined the rebellion. He joined the band of a rebel chief named Guo Zixing, and it took about 5 minutes for everyone to notice this newcomer was different. He was brave in a fight, but that was common enough. What was rare was the cool head on top of it. He was clever, and people trusted him. He rose fast. Chief Guo saw the young man's worth and did something that would change everything. He gave Zhu his adopted daughter in marriage. Her name was Ma, and of all the strokes of luck in Zhu's hard life, she may have been the greatest of them. She was wise where he was fierce, calm where he ran hot. She could read and think, and she was not one bit afraid of him. The old stories love her. Once, when Zhu was imprisoned by a jealous rival, Ma smuggled him hot flatbread, hidden against her own skin, burning herself to feed him. All his life, when Zhu's temper turned dangerous, it was Ma who could cool it. She spoke for the condemned. She reminded him where he came from. He would become a hard and frightening man in time, but he loved and trusted her utterly to the end of her days, and she earned it. Now, most rebel armies in those days were little better than bandits. They took what they wanted from the very peasants they claimed to save. Zhu had begged on those roads. He had been that starving peasant, and he understood something the others did not. The people were the prize. So he did a strange thing. He forbade his soldiers to rob the farmers. Pay for your rice, he told them. Harm no villager or answer for it. And word of it spread like water downhill. Here, at last, was an army that did not burn your home. Peasants began to help him, feed him, join him. He gathered clever men too, not just fighters, scholars, learned advisors who could plan a campaign and govern a city. He listened to them. One old scholar gave him a plan in 3 plain lines. Build high walls, store up grain, and do not rush to call yourself king. Be patient, grow strong quietly. Let the other rebels burn themselves out fighting. It was cold, clever advice, and Zhu took every word of it to heart. He set his eyes on a great prize, the city of Nanjing on the mighty Yangtze River, rich, strong-walled, and perfectly placed. In 1356, he took it, and Nanjing became his capital, his anvil, the base from which he would forge everything that came next. From behind those walls he grew year by year. He governed well. He fed his people. He built an army that won and did not break. But he was not alone in his ambition. The middle of China was carved up between 3 great rebel warlords now, and the country was not big enough for 3. To the west sat his most dangerous rival of all, a fierce, powerful warlord named Chen Yuliang, with a fleet like a floating city. In 1363, Chen came for him with everything he had. Hundreds of ships, great towering war junks, 3 decks high, painted red, chained together like a fortress. They met on a huge inland water called Lake Poyang. Zhu's ships were smaller, fewer, lighter. On paper, he was already beaten. It became one of the largest naval battles in all of human history. Hundreds of thousands of men locked together on the water for weeks. For days it went badly. Chen's giant chain junks were like moving castles. Zhu's little boats broke against them and were driven back. And then Zhu remembered an old trick, the very one that had sunk a Mongol fleet long ago on another river far to the south. He loaded small boats with reeds and gunpowder, set them alight, and sent them drifting down the wind into Chen's chained-up fleet. Because Chen's ships were chained together, they could not scatter. The fire jumped from junk to junk, and the great floating fortress became a lake of flame. Chen Yuliang died in the chaos, an arrow through the eye. His fleet was destroyed, and with it died the greatest threat Zhou would ever face. After Poyang, there was no stopping him. One by one, the last rivals fell or bent the knee, and the road to the throne lay open. And now he turned to the great enemy above them all, the Mongols, the Yuan dynasty that had ground China down for 100 years. He sent his armies north, toward the great capital the Mongols called Dardess, and this time it was the conquerors who ran. The last Mongol emperor did not wait to be caught. He fled the city, fled north through the gates, back to the open steppe his ancestors came from. After nearly a century, the foreign dynasty was swept out of China, back onto the grasslands. The land belonged to its own people once more. And so, in 1368, the beggar monk did the impossible. In Nanjing, Zhu Yuanzhang was proclaimed emperor of a brand new dynasty, the Ming. He took the reign name Hongwu, the vastly martial. The boy who once begged rice with a wooden bowl now held the mandate of heaven itself. And here you might think the story ends. Beggar becomes emperor and lives happily ever after, but real lives are never so tidy. As emperor, he remembered the farmers. He cut their taxes, gave out land, dug canals, and filled the granaries against the next famine. That he never forgot. But the hunger and betrayal of his youth had left deep scars. As the years passed, the emperor grew suspicious, then fearful, then dangerous. He came to trust no one. He built a secret police to watch his own officials, and when he sensed a plot, real or imagined, he struck without mercy. In his great purges, tens of thousands were put to death, officials, generals, whole families. The throne he built stood on a great deal of blood. Through it all, only one person could ever calm him, his wife, the Empress Ma. She begged mercy for many, and often he listened. But in 1382, Ma died, and they say the great terrible emperor wept like a child and never took another empress again. His last soft restraint was gone. He ruled on, hard and alone, for 16 more years. And in 1398, the beggar who became emperor died an old man on the throne he had bled to build. The dynasty he founded, the Ming, would go on to rule China for nearly 300 years, one of the longest and greatest in all its history. The Great Wall as we know it, the forbidden city that came after, so much of what the world pictures as old China grew from the ground he cleared. He was many things at once, a cruel man and a great one, a tyrant to his court and a savior to the farmer in the field. But strip all the rest away, and this is what remains: a starving orphan with a wooden bowl who refused to lie down and die. So tonight, when you think your own road is long, remember the beggar on the dusty road who walked it all the way to the dragon throne. Rest now, sleep well.